백전백승도동강 새 시대를 열었다. 천리만리의 희상을 온 세상에 떨치자.
Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Tale of the Peopleist. Welcome back to the first in a while MTGs and Refugees. I was reading into the news recently, doing a bit of research for The Office, and there's been some news in the human rights zone. So one research group from Seoul, they went to the World Congress on the death penalty. There's a lot of places in the world that still have the death penalty, so of course, that's going to include North Korea. Usually, when people complain about the death penalty, it's just because it exists, or, because there are some mistakes in police and trial procedures, things like that, where someone who should not get executed does get executed. And one of the big reasons why people oppose the death penalty is because a lot of governments, they make mistakes. But this time, North Korea popped up at the Global Congress for the first time because we need to talk about public executions. There's a lot of issues with the death penalty, especially when we're talking about North Korea, but what people like to really talk about is how the government invites people or maybe even forces people to watch when someone gets executed. There's a lot of details to it. I don't want to exaggerate or sensationalize, so stick around and I'll try to separate fact from fiction as we dig into the politics of death. And of course, no talk on death politics would be complete without a kill deck. I did showcase this one last week on Combo Breaker, but I've been running it in standard lately because it's just a smooth deck to play. This is my Orzhov token blink deck, which uses tokens as sacrifices to draw cards and remove enemy creatures. The way this does it is using two specific creatures. Father's Faithful over here. It can directly kill any creature, and if it wasn't dealt any damage this turn, the controller of that creature draws two cards. So it can be used as removal, but it can also be turned against your own creatures, in this case, tokens, which we're going to have a lot of, to just keep drawing cards like a sacrifice engine. The other is the Ruthless Lawbringer, which can sacrifice a creature on entry to delete any destructible, hexable permanent. So both of these creatures, their destroy effects trigger on entry. So that's why I'm running a couple of blink cards over here, 6 of them in total, that will bring them back in for even more value. Everything else in this deck either produces tokens or it benefits from blinking, or maybe even both. It blinks in and then it produces more tokens. It is a blink token synergy deck with some pretty good kill spells, so let's get into it. So last year there was a bit of a word going around. We had been talking a lot about censorship in North Korea. Basically, a lot of people were starting to get a hold of K-dramas and they were watching them secretly. I've covered this before, but I'll put it on fast forward for you. Someone downloads torrents or something in China, they put bootleg Netflix shows on a USB drive, then that goes in a shipment along with stuff like rice and oil that's put on a truck that goes across the border. There are a few connection points between China and North Korea, like the Dandong-Siniju Friendship Bridge, where goods can be sent across the two countries without the UN noticing, of course, because selling stuff to North Korea is basically illegal, but try to get both of these countries to let the UN sit guards on the border, right? So the truck goes across the border, a bunch of underwear and socks and stuff like that are unpacked. Some boxes of quote-unquote chewing gum get sent off to some merchant who brings it to the Jangmadang, which is the local black market, which is a literal market that cops usually just kind of ignore, or maybe they get bribed to ignore them. Then local people in those border cities, they buy some USB drives and they watch TV at home. There used to be this whole thing about DVD players and whatnot. I guess they still have them, but in the 2020s, a lot of even like rural families have at least one computer or maybe like a Chinese style smart TV that can run videos off of USB. I mean, we're not in the past. Some simple cheap electronics, they can run downloaded video files, as long as they're not like HEVC. My computer can't run HVC. Please stop encoding your videos in HEVC. Not everyone has an AI strength PC. Man. Anyway, the word we heard was that people were getting interrogated, arrested, locked up, and some people were getting executed just for like having and watching like K-dramas, right? And there was a bit of news on it, I think in fall of last year. It was pretty late in the year. And I was at an event with an organization I was working with. I was manning a booth doing some PR, providing support for international visitors who wanted to learn about North Korean affairs and stuff like that. And we had this one sign that was up in our booth. It was just quotes from North Koreans, and one was about executions over watching K-dramas. And some fellow, I don't know what country he was from, he comes up to look at it. I ask him if I can help, and he starts negging us like, hey, yeah, do you have some actual evidence for that quote? I don't know, man. Do we have Kim Jong-un's personal arrest and execution records? Is that what you're asking about? Did you verify what these people were saying? I mean, yeah, sure. We sent our research spies to the ground in Hasan. I mean, I get what he's saying. It's really easy for one or two escaped North Koreans to give us a story like this. It's sensational. It sells. Or, like Voice of America or Radio Free Asia or someone like that. They can get wind of one of these stories and they'll publish it. And a lot of these news organizations, they don't really have to source their more sensationalist articles the way most news media does. Because how are you supposed to even disprove remarks about an ultra-closed, ultra-controlled society? It's a double-edged sword. We can't get information from inside the country easily, but also it's hard for people to disprove some of the claims that we have. And yeah, I mean, that's really tough. That means we can easily be wrong, and it means it can be harder for people to believe us. It means it can be kind of hard for us to build up our reputation. But it doesn't mean that we are wrong, at least not all the time. I mean, I've heard speakers from North Korea. They were visiting that organization specifically, and they told us behind closed doors about those executions and things like that. They were telling us about what laws they have against foreign media. Like, you watch one episode, you go to jail for a year. You watch 2 episodes, you go to jail for 2 years, and it kind of adds up, something like that. It might be something to take with a grain of salt. We can't say 100% what the laws on the books are and how those laws are taken out, but it's not like it's complete lies completely made up. That's what I want to say. I mean, there's a fair point to be made here that if you want to go out in public and make really big statements, then you want to have something backing you up. If you're going to tell the whole world, like, hey, North Koreans are getting shot for watching K-dramas, then you probably need to have something more than a closed-door testimony going for you. And at the same time, I don't think I could help. I couldn't quote a study or anything that made our point. I mean, I didn't have anything to say, like, go to this website, read this document, and then you'll see what we mean. But that was then, and this is now. Now I got data, my dudes. So this group that I mentioned before, the group that went to the Global Congress, that is the Transitional Justice Working Group, or TJWG. We're just going to call them TJ for short from now on. So TJ is part of a coalition against the death penalty, and their big thing is mass data collection of evidence of state crimes against people. So let me tell you a little bit about transitional justice first, the concept. If we go back 5 or 7 decades, World War II is ending, right? A lot of dictatorships came to power. Some of them went out of power. There have been a ton of these in Latin America from the 50s through right now, basically. I mean, every decade we see a couple of Latin American countries transition from dictatorships to democracies, or from lower quality democracies to higher quality ones. And by that, I mean they're more stable democracies. People can vote more freely. There's less guns involved in the elections and more actual politics and campaigning. I'm not really a good source on Latin America. I'll just tell you that now. I did read about the Justice Cascade, which was a pretty cool review of several events that led to one another happening, where across Latin America, we just suddenly saw countries turning from total dictatorships to justice-based societies. And when we talk about justice here, we mean that presidents who kidnapped and executed their people actually face justice. So think Pinochet. He ran Chile until 1990. He was arrested in 1998. That is a surprisingly short amount of time for a politician to actually have to face justice for crimes against his own people. Most dictators don't get arrested. So when we talk about transitional justice, we mean the transition of a country from totalitarian to democratic. And we talk about legal justice, as in leaders facing police and facing trials for their crimes. This is a real idea for North Korea. There are many of us who imagine that someday North Korea is going to reform, whether it's through reunification or internal collapse or, some kind of massive change. When that happens, what we want to see is justice coming with the transition. And that doesn't mean every single person who ever worked with a Kim is going to hang. It means that they would have to face a judge and jury, be tried for real crimes, and hopefully be sentenced to life in prison the way any normal citizen would for, participating in murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Now, if you want to have justice, if you want to have law, order, and trials, you need to have evidence. So this is the point of TJ, the group, who wants to see transitional justice in North Korea happen someday. They are building a huge database of criminal evidence. So what kind of information do you want to have in it? Well, you want to have evidence of disappearances, of execution and murder, of torture camps, political prisons, things that would all be considered, crimes against humanity. So they do this in two ways. The first is that they try to collect specific information about the crimes. They do this by checking open source information like news, and they consult various reports. But they also collect their own information. They build their own reports by running interviews. They talk with North Koreans here in South Korea to see what do they know, what have they heard and seen. The second thing they do after that is mapping, where they try to get location information when they investigate each of these events. So for example, if they're talking to a North Korean, they'll be asking questions like, so your friend disappeared. When did he disappear? What happened on that day? Where did they get him? Where did they take him? If you get that kind of information, even if it's just descriptions, even if they say maybe 30 kilometers from where we live to the south, and you just run with that, you try to make guesses and estimates, collect place names and so on. I mean, I've sat in on one of these testimonies before, these interviews, and I can say there's a lot of detail. It's sensitive and sensible. It's not a police interrogation. It's more like how you doing and what would you like to share with us kind of talk. And we find that North Koreans are actually very happy to share names and places with us, especially if they think that it can contribute to justice in the long term. So there's a good reason why TJ showed up at this global congress, and it's because of the work they've been doing. This past April 2026, they released a report. 880 people, over 1,000 cases, all of them executions. And I don't know about smoking guns, but here's our ballistics report. Let's see what's in the casings. So I try not to get too heavy with numbers while I'm talking here, but I do need to mention a few numbers just for data's sake. So first of all, one execution event, it doesn't mean one person. They can take out, on average, like 3 people per event, which means it could be more. There could be 5 or 10 people that are executed at one time. So there have been over 140 sentences since Kim Jong-un showed up. And these are the ones that you can find in the news or that people told TJ about as witnesses. So half of them were done in public spaces, as in like the people in that city were called out to watch the execution. They say specifically masses were mobilized to observe in the text, which I take to mean your neighborhood team leader knocked on your door and said, you better come out and see this, party's orders. Another 20% were public executions for specific groups, not for the general public to watch. So this doesn't mean town center. The report talked about people like police, people at political training academies, basically those who might actually have to order an execution or, fire the gun. Those are the people who have to watch these semi-public executions. Your boss says, hey, Lieutenant Song, get out here. We're about to light this dude up and you have to see it. Party orders. The mass viewings, they take place in old airfields by the river or in like storage yards, junkyards, farmland, basically open areas where they have space to gather a lot of people. So this means a couple of things. One, if you're thinking about like some kind of movie that has witch burnings or something like that, it's not like that. It's not that the execution happened in the literal town square. They would get all the people from town and say, come down this way. So it's a very organized affair, very much a scheduled affair. You can't just hop out of the office on your lunch break and watch while chewing popcorn or something. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that they specifically picked out places that have a lot of space, if you think about airfields and junkyards and stuff. So this means I can imagine that they want to have a lot of people watching these public executions. If you do it in the center of town, probably it's not going to be easy to actually see what's going on. I mean, Korean towns are kind of dense, if you think about it. If you want an actual stadium execution, you need a stadium. So the semi-public ones, on the other hand, the ones for police and political trainees and stuff, those take place in a firing range or like, I don't know, a university yard, the square behind such and such school building. Nothing really shocking there, I think. So let's do the math here. That's about 3/4 of executions that they do publicly. So those are, wait a second here. Those are for ones that are reported or witnessed. So I want to be totally fair here. There could be a lot more executions that happen and they just don't know about them. Public or private executions. The source of information here is pretty much 1, people who escaped North Korea to South Korea, and 2, some inside sources in North Korea who are pretty much just people on the ground and probably not well connected to the party if they're giving out information to news smugglers. So if you're hoping for like special information, insider information, That's not quite what these guys are providing. So I'm not sure if I mentioned news smugglers before. I want to take a minute on that if you don't mind. You can read Daily NK and a few others like Asia Press, Im Jinggang. They have what they call inside sources, not as in inside the party, but inside the country of North Korea. They never say who these sources are, which is unfortunate for verification, but it's really important for safety. If they say who these people are, they're probably going to be the next ones in the middle of an airfield, if you catch my drift. So these guys might not have special info or anything like that. They just see what's happening on the ground because they live on the ground in North Korea, and they give reports to someone who brings the news back to HQ in Seoul or Osaka or somewhere like that. There's a few ways they can get the news out. They might send the word to traders who go across the Chinese border, who can then send the report out from the Chinese side. They might actually be one of those traders, or they could be someone with a Chinese cell phone or something like that. If you're close enough to the Chinese border, you can actually get some reception if your phone is good enough. I'm not going to go into details on that because I don't have the right information, and I probably would not. I don't think I'm supposed to share it even if I did have that information, but you probably already know how cell phones work, and you can look at maps of the border on Google Maps if you like. You can see how far apart the two countries are across the river, less than a kilometer in some areas, town to town. But the problem that you usually have to deal with is stuff like signal jammers. We know that the North Korean government does signal jamming. I don't know how strong it is at every point along the border. So that's some very sensitive information that I am not privy to. So anyway, yeah, some info is from escaped people. Some is from inside sources, but inside as in inside North Korea, not like secret party intel. That's something important to keep in mind. It means that we don't actually know if the majority of executions that happen are public executions. There could be more private executions that the party people know about and the general people don't know about that. So I want to be clear on that the data we have shows that 3/4 of executions are public, but that our data is not complete. So please don't go around saying this guy on YouTube told me that most executions in North Korea are public, and I checked his citations and it's totally true. I didn't say that. I didn't quite say that. I said of the data we have. Right? So just rewind a bit and be clear on what I just told you, if you don't mind doing that. So with that being said, we don't know the actual real ratio of public to hidden executions. But what we do know is that public executions are real. I mean, do we know beyond a shadow of a doubt? No, we don't know anything in North Korea beyond a shadow of a doubt, but we have hundreds of people saying that it happened. But here's the tricky part, because I believe in transparency. I don't know how many people did not report seeing an execution. The brief on the report says 265 people gave testimonies about executions in the Jong-un era. That's not all the 880. I mean, the 880 includes Kim Jong-un era, Kim Jong-il, Kim Il-sung, okay? So I'm not saying there's 600 people who know nothing about executions. I'm just saying it was 265 about specifically the Kim Jong-un era. But what I want to know is, how many people in total did they ask before they got to their 880 number? How many people said they had never seen a public execution or never heard about any executions? I don't have that information. So I want to be clear that this is a limit to our knowledge. If they interviewed, 300 people at first, that means that most people have seen or heard about those executions. If they interviewed 1,000 people and then they brought it down to 265, then that tells us that there's actually not that many public executions. So they're just something to think about, that we kind of have these blind spots in research data. We do know about regions, however. We know about locations. Out of over 800 people interviewed, more than 600 of them came from North Hamgyong and Ryanggang provinces. These are border provinces. This is to be expected because most people who escape from North Korea escape from those regions. That's another unfortunate data problem, because we can't say that we know a lot of these public executions specifically happen in these border regions. We just know that the people who see executions happen in border regions used to live in those border regions. So do you see the problem here? It's just kind of a limitation of who we can get the data from. That problem makes it harder for us to understand the next bit of information, which is the why. Why did these happen? Why did these executions happen? What are they getting executed for? TJ collected a lot of information on accusations too, as in the reasons why people were executed. That's something I want to talk about, bringing it back around to the starting question. Are people actually getting executed because of K-dramas? And the answer is yes, but the data is kind of tricky to analyze. It's tricky because we expect to see smuggled media on the Chinese border, but we also expect people escaping North Korea to escape from the Chinese border region. So we can't isolate the variables. This is not great science if we want to have very clean conclusions, if we want to talk about numbers going up and going down. But this doesn't mean that we know nothing and we can't prove anything. It just means that we don't have a perfect picture of the situation. What we still know about why people get executed is this. 20% of the events they listed were executions for violations of speech control. This was about 30 cases in the report, including religion and giving out foreign media, trade or sale of foreign media. The report specifically listed introduction or sale of South Korean movies, TV shows, and music. So that means there is a non-zero chance that North Koreans are getting executed in public, in groups, for passing around South Korean TV shows, music, and stuff. Does this mean people are getting done in just for watching them? That is not clear. Another source, Amnesty, says that minors, high schoolers watching dramas have to go through re-education, which is, it's not great news, but I mean, it's a lot better than the alternative. The report also says that the most common reason given for execution was political crimes before COVID, and after COVID, the main reason has been violations of speech control. The TJ authors concluded that this means the government is getting stricter when it comes to dealing with cultural imports. Or possibly the imports are increasing. It's hard to say, because we know that trade with China is up. Humanitarian aid like food from the US, UN, and South Korea is now zero for North Korea. North Koreans have more computers and smart-ish TVs. USB drives are really cheap and small. Basically, now is a pretty good time to smuggle in media to North Korea. So whether it's a bigger problem than it was before, or the government is going harder in it than they were before, or both, we can't really say. I'll let you imagine, and if I find new information on the topic, I'll try to give you an update later. But another thing that I noticed in the report was the use of big numbers to say that crackdowns on speech crimes are growing. I'm not going to quote them. You can check in the citations, but they make it sound like there are several times as many executions for speech crime now. I'm not wild about this conclusion because the number, it's still really small. I mean, going from, let's say, 3 cases to 10 cases per year, it's a big jump if you do the math. But I don't know if it's enough data that we can really say that there's a big change. Maybe they just found 7 new people who heard about those executions in 1 year. It's just not enough to be more than coincidence. It might be more than coincidence, but again, can't know. And again, pitching for the other side now, the 140 or so cases they had were unique cases. So for more than 800 people, they could have had 5 or 10 or 20 people say that they attended the same public execution. There's no way to know that stuff without having access to the microdata, the really sensitive behind doors information, which we're not going to get anytime soon. TJ's not going to give it to us because exposing that information would make the North Korean government track down their families and punish them, like I was saying before. So to wrap it up, here is what we know about the death penalty in North Korea. Public executions exist. The reason for executions is often publicly known. Some of the reasons include murder, which is normal on a global level. Some of them are political crimes, which is not normal. Some of them are crimes that just have to do with sharing movies and TV shows with friends, which really is not normal. One of the reasons why so many people oppose the death penalty in North Korea is because it is given out for reasons we could not imagine in most of the developed world. Usually, when people are given the death penalty, it's because they committed a very wild crime, like killing a bunch of people. Another reason why people are opposed is because of the process. Some people are executed without trial, especially if, for example, they try to escape a political prison, they'll be shot on the spot. Other people get trials, but we don't believe that these are fair and proper trials that have collection and presentation of evidence or, lawyers and juries. The short of it is that if the party decides they want you dead, you are dead. That is not something we are okay with in the human rights field. Even if you feel comfortable with the idea of the death penalty, at the very least, you should believe that there must be a reason for the death penalty. The reason must be a good reason, and it must be properly proven that the reason actually even exists. If you don't believe people have the very basic right to life, it's going to be really hard to discuss anything else with you, and I honestly don't know what to do if that's the situation. But for the rest of you who do care about the basic right to life, keep on peopling.
올 수가 더 빨리